Sudoku friends, and welcome to yet another New York Times Hard Sudoku. This Sudoku is going to be a little special because I'm going to spend a lot of time explaining in quite some detail my thought processes when I solve a Sudoku like this without using pencil marks. And the reason I chose this puzzle in particular was that I solved it this morning, spending only less than 5 minutes. And this is supposed to be a hard puzzle. I thought this would be a good opportunity if you are new to my channel to see how you can solve Sudokus without spending too much time. And I know that other solvers will recommend that you use notation. For example, Snyder is very popular and also quite useful, I have to admit. I just find myself that it's much more gratifying to solve a puzzle without using pencil marks if it's possible. Some puzzles are, of course, of extreme difficulty and they are not easy, or probably they are impossible to solve without using notation. But for this puzzle, it certainly is not a necessity, and I'm going to show you in detail how I go about this. I can see that the two here and the two here occupy and block these 6 cells from containing a 2, and this 2 blocks these 3 cells. That means that a 2 will have to go in this cell in the top row. And we also need to input a 2 in this cell here because of the 2 here and the 2 here. So that is pretty easy. One thing that I always spot for some reason is that the 4 and the 7 here and the 4 and the 7 here force a 4 and a 7 to go in these two cells because we already now have a 4 and a 7 for columns 1 and 2. And if we think about where we can enter a 4 and a 7 in column 3, these 6 cells can't take a 4 and a 7 because their blocks of 3 by 3 cells already contain 4 and a 7. So these two will have to be a 4 and a 7. And we can find a 3, and the 3 will have to go in the cell here. And I will explain why. Because we have this 3 that blocks these 3 cells, and we have a 3 here that blocks these 2 cells, we know that a 3 for this column will have to go either here or here. It's not very important at this moment whether it goes here or here. What's important is that a 3 for column 3 will have to be in one of these 2 cells. So a ghost 3 here, as it were, and this 3 here puts a 3 in one of these 2 cells, doesn't it? And there's already one 3 in the row. And that means that a 3 will have to go here. And that gives me a 1 for this cell. Can you see why? Well, I'll explain it. We just found out earlier that these 2 cells will have to be a 4 and a 7, didn't we? And that means that they cannot also be a 1. And the 1 here blocks these 3 cells. Therefore, this cell has got to be a 1. Now we just need to find a 5 and an 8 to complete this column. There's an 8 in the bottom row. That means that this cell must be a 5, and this cell therefore must be an 8. And immediately when we see this pattern here, we know that these 3 empty cells will have to contain a 5, 6, and a 9. There's a 5 and a 9 already in this row, therefore this must be a 6. And then the 5 and a 9 will have to go in these 2 cells, and we know where they will go, don't we? Because of the 9 here. This must be a 5, and this therefore a 9. So a 4 and a 7 here. That leaves an 8 and a 5 and a 9 for these 3 cells, and therefore a 2 and a 6 for these 2 cells. And therefore a 1, 8, and a 3 for these 3 cells. And we have a 3 and an 8 already in this row. Therefore, we know that this has got to be a 1. These two will now have to be a 3 and an 8 in some order. And I believe that we can find a 1 Look at the one up here. It blocks these two cells from being a 1, doesn't it? And the one here blocks these two cells from being a 1. Therefore, a 1 for this column and for this box will have to go in either this cell or in this cell. It's not really important at the moment which cell it's going to be. What's important is that a 1 for this column can only go in this cell or in this cell. And since we have a 1 already for column 9, now we need to locate a cell for a 1 in column 8. And since it can't go here nor in any of these three cells, it cannot go here either because of the 1 here. So we know that this must be a 1. And this is a very good place to get stuck in a puzzle like this. There is one thing we can do. We can just start counting. If we look at intersections of columns and rows that have a lot of numbers in them already, we often come up with a digit. For example, let's look at this column here. To fill it, we need to find a 1, 4, 7, and a 3. Now, this cell here can be seen by a 1, 4, and a 7. Therefore, it's got to be a 3. And we just told ourselves that these two cells have to be a 3 and an 8, didn't we? There's a 3 here now that can see this cell. Therefore, it's got to be an 8, and the 3 will have to go up here. So for this row 5, we need to find a 2 and a 3 and an 8 and a 1. 1, 2, 3, and an 8 to complete this row. There's a 3 and an 8 here that can see this cell, and there's a 2 here, and that makes this cell a 1. Now we need to find a 2, 3, and an 8 to complete this row. This cell here has got to be a 5 because this 5 here and this 5 here, they block these 4 cells. And the 5 up here blocks these 3 cells, and therefore this cell is a 5. Now the 5 here and the 5 here, they leave us the task of finding a 5 for this column 9, doesn't it? And since it can't go here or in any of these two cells because of these two 5s, it needs to go in one of these 3 cells. And there's only one cell it can go in, and that's this one, because we have a 5 here and here already. We need now to find a 6 and a 9 to complete this row. There's a 9 here already, so it's clear that the 6 will have to go here and the 9 will have to go here. Let's examine the digit 8. An 8 can't go in this cell for this obvious reason up here, and it cannot go in this cell. So an 8 will have to go in this cell or in this cell, because we of course need an 8 for row number 4, right? So a ghost 8 here and an 8 here gives us an 8 for one of these two cells. And it cannot be this cell because of the 8 up here. So we know that an 8 must go here. The 8 here and here puts an 8 in this cell. Now, one of these cells will have to be a 2. And since we have a 2 here and here, the correct cell is going to be this one. The 2 here and the 2 here force a 2 in this cell. Now we need a 2 for this cell and for this cell. We also need a 2 for one of these two cells, but that's besides the point. We just need to fill in the last digit here, and that is going to be a 3, of course. Now we have a 3 here, and we need to find a 3 for one of these 3 cells, and it's got to be the top one because of the 3 here and the 3 here, right? We already have a 3 for this row, and we have a 3 for this row. We need to find now a 3 for row 6. And it needs to go in one of these two cells. And this, of course, is blocked by this 3 up here. So the 3 will have to go here. Now we need a 6 and a 7 for these two cells. We remember that these two empty cells have to be a 1 and a 7 in some combination. We can see that the 6 here and the 6 here and the 6 here gives us a 6 for the cell here. So now these two cells will have to be a 4 and a 9. And we now know that because of the 4 here, the 9 will go here and the 4 here. And that takes care of the 4 and the 7 we have had from the very beginning of this puzzle. This is now a 4 and this is a 7. And therefore this is a 7 and this is a 1. These two cells have to be a 5 and a 9 now. And it cannot be a 9, of course, because of the 9 here. So it must be a 5 and this is the 9. These two now have to be a 5 and an 8. And there is a 5 in this row already. So the 8 goes here and the 5 here. We need to find a 7 for this column. And the only place it can go, of course, is here. And that takes care of the 6 and the 7 we had here, doesn't it? Because this is now a 6 and this is a 7. And the 7 here gives us a 7 for the bottom row, like so. These two cells now have to be a 2 and a 9. And this cannot be a 9 because of the 9 over to the left. Therefore, it's a 2 and this is a 9. And remember, we had a 2 and a 6 here also, right? So this is now a 6 and this is a 2. The last digit here has got to be a 6. And this 6 now and the 1 here and the 1 here puts a 6 in this cell. And the last digit that we need for this row is going to be a 4. It goes here. And that gives us a 4 for this row. The last digit here now is an 8. And that gives us an 8 for row 2, like so. And the last digit here has got to be a 7. The 7 here and here puts a 7 in this cell, and therefore, of course, a 1 needs to go here and here, and this must be a 9 now, and this has got to be a 4. I hope that at least some of you found this process useful and that it showed you how you can go about solving a Sudoku puzzle without using any annotation at all. At least the ones up to and including the evil level puzzles. Diabolical level puzzles always or almost always tend to require pencil marks, at least a few of them. Anyway, thank you for watching and see you again back here soon. Bye for now.